Hi, my name is Roy Eiermann. I am one of the program specialists here at Seven Challenges, and I was hoping to do a video on something that I learned a couple of years ago and have really applied to the clients that I've worked with, the staff that I've worked with, and it's just really helped enhance the work that they're doing and the work that I'm doing. And so I thought it would be a great opportunity to share it with all of you as well. Um, so, how often do we hear the phrase, I just want them to be happy, or I just want to be happy? It's a pretty common phrase that I think is used, in a variety of settings, that this idea that happiness is the goal. But the thing is that if we live life pursuing happiness and trying to always go for happiness, we're going to be disappointed because happiness is an emotion, just like all the other emotions that we experience. So this concept was really introduced to me as I learned ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. Also, when I dove into the world of ACT and really started to apply it to my own practice, what I came across was a book called The Happiness Trap by Dr. Russ Harris. And he really talks about this concept. So don't want you to think that any of this information is coming directly from my mind. It's just things that I've been able to incorporate and learn and really use as I've worked with clients and as I've worked with my team. So this idea is that, happiness, as well as all the other emotions, they come and go. There are times that we feel anger, there are times that we feel sadness, there are times that we feel guilt, and there are times that we feel joy, times that we feel excitement, right? You get the idea. And the intensity of those emotions come and go. And what's another way to really look at emotions and to look at feelings is they provide us information and they tell us about what might be going on in the world around us. They tell us how we might be reacting to things in the world. They tell us how we might be reacting to internal stimuli that's going on in our own brains, maybe telling us what we're reacting to as far as sensations within our own bodies. But they're constantly giving us information. And we can choose to ignore that information, or we can choose to pay attention to that information. A really good example of this would be the emotion of guilt. Guilt is really seen as this, what some people might call a negative emotion. I personally don't prescribe to the idea of there being positive or negative emotions. There are definitely comfortable emotions that we enjoy experiencing, joy, excitement. And then there's emotions that maybe are more uncomfortable, sadness, anger, guilt. And so when we move away from thinking of them as positive or negative emotions and we think about them as providing us information, you can interact a little bit differently with the emotion of guilt. So when I start to feel guilt, I question what's going on here. What might I feel guilty for? And I can reflect and really better understand, did I do something wrong? Did I make a poor choice? Would I do something different in the future if I was faced with a similar situation? And what I can do is really use guilt to inform me. I can use guilt to be a better person when situations like that pop up the next time. I can use guilt to change me and how I interact with people in the world. And it really can be that informative emotion. And in that way, it becomes a tool, not just something that feels really uncomfortable to experience. And so there are times, and I've definitely worked with clients where they've used that as a tool and they notice that the guilt doesn't immediately go away. And what I will often coach them in doing, and what I will sometimes even use myself, is continuing to question, is there more that I need to learn here? Did I learn something initially, but is there more that this guilt is trying to inform me of? And if not, can I mindfully let the guilt go? Can I let it just be? I'm not trying to push it away. I'm not trying to force it away. I'm not trying to actively distract myself from it, but I'm just allowing it to be and reminding myself, I think I've learned everything that I need to learn from guilt as I'm experiencing it. And I can just let it go. And then typically what happens over time is the intensity of that guilt goes down. And then ultimately disappears when I've learned what I needed to learn from it. So this is an example of how I'm interacting a little bit differently with what would classically be called an uncomfortable emotion. Let me give you one more example. So let's look at grief, intense sadness. Um, Absolutely an emotion that many of us have experienced at either a loss of a loved one, but it could also be the grief and loss associated with disappointment, losing something that's valuable to us. It doesn't have to be limited to just a person in our life. It could be situations, roles that we have, things like that. And so we can look at grief and sadness as a manifestation of the love that we have for that thing, how intensely important that thing was to us, or how much we intensely loved the individual that we've lost. And I will be honest, I did get this from a very popular action movie. Some of you may know what I'm referencing, but it got me thinking in this line with how we interact with our emotions. And so with that grief, what I can do is I can begin to translate it to every time I experience that intense grief, or I'm reminded of that person that I've lost or that situation that's changed, I'm reminded of how much I loved it and how important it was to me. And it can be an honoring of that. And there may even be an opportunity for me to express my love of that person or that thing in certain ways. So as I've navigated with clients and with team members who are working with individuals dealing with loss, is there expression? Is somebody who used to love gardening, is there a way we could donate and dedicate a community garden to that individual? I know personally when I experienced a loss, we had a bunch of home movies of a family member of mine who passed, and my project was to put together that family movies that we had of him in kind of a remembering of his life. But it was an expression of my grief and my intense love of that individual. So again, just another example of how we can interact a little bit differently with emotions that are classically viewed as pretty uncomfortable. Um, one of the things that Dr. Russ Harris recommends, especially in the area of happiness, that instead of chasing happiness, that we are chasing a life filled with meaning and purpose, a life that is rich and fulfilling. And he identifies this as pursuing values. So living a value-filled life. And what's really cool about that is when you are living out your values and pursuing your values, pretty often joy is going to accompany that. Now, it's not going to be the only emotion that's going to accompany that, and joy isn't always going to be at its most intense, but it will accompany when you're pursuing and your focus remains on living a value-filled life rather than pursuing happiness. So I'm talking all about this, and the question then becomes, okay, how does this translate to our clients? How do we translate everything that I've kind of been talking about to clients who are, actively using substances or trying to limit their substance use or have completely discontinued their substance use? Well, I think one of the first ways is really helping clients understand feelings are temporary. And I would even extend that to urges, right? So the feelings that we experience and the urges that we experience, whether it be feelings that we then use substances to cover up or push away those feelings, or feelings that come up when we are limiting our substance use and we're trying to hold to those limits, or when we're discontinuing our substance use. And again, emotions come up, urges come up, reminding clients that what you're experiencing in the moment is temporary. Just like the waves in the ocean, it ebbs and it flows. And it may be very intense right now, but can we hold out for 10, 30, 60 minutes? Can we hold out for a couple of hours and notice if that intense emotion changes? Does it go down? Does it go up? Does it remain the same? But chances are it's not going to be static for long periods of time. There's an ebb and there's a flow. It may never completely go away, but it will change in intensity. And so this relates a little bit to challenge 5, where we seem to be headed, where we wanted to go, and what we wanted to accomplish. And that if we are experiencing these emotions, but we're staying focused on the value, what do I want my life to look like? What am I trying to pursue? How am I trying to live a rich and purpose-filled life based on my values, not on my feelings? And so if we help clients really focus on that, then there is a better target that we're aiming for rather than just trying to feel good or trying to get rid of those uncomfortable emotions. But it's tolerating those uncomfortable emotions while pursuing what's important to us, and that is part of our purpose-filled life. I think the other thing that we can teach clients is that emotions and these urges can, again, really inform us, can teach us things about ourselves, can teach us what's important. And so as we're experiencing those things and we're better understanding what emotions we're experiencing at different points, that we can really help guide our clients in understanding what's important to them. And how their emotions are interacting with themselves and how they can discover new things as they're experiencing them, and enter into that with curiosity rather than this doesn't feel good, I'm just trying to push it away. And I think one aspect of that that's also important is the aspect of boredom, right? So although we wouldn't necessarily call that an emotion per se, it's more of a sensation. I would, that's kind of how I would describe it. We are guilty, and I am absolutely a part of this, at chasing away boredom as soon as it starts to pop up. And, we've got something that chases boredom away instantly. Walk into any bus stop or walk into any waiting room, and what are people doing? They're on their phones. And so the skill of being able to tolerate boredom is something that we've lost that skill over time, and we haven't learned how to tolerate boredom, or our tolerance for boredom has really gone down. And so I think it's important that we also begin to teach our clients that, because how many of our clients maybe have used substances when feeling bored? I know in a lot of clients that I've worked with, that's come up as a topic. And so teaching them to tolerate boredom, and that boredom, just like emotions, ebbs and flows, and that we don't have to immediately respond when we're feeling intense boredom, that we can choose other things, and we can ride that wave of boredom without immediately jumping into using substances. And that will be okay. So just a little summary here of some of the things that I've learned and how I've really been able to incorporate them, things like ACT and what I've learned about emotions and how I've incorporated emotions into my work with 7 challenges. Just appreciate the opportunity of being able to share this with you. Thank you for taking the time to even watch this video and learn a little bit more about it. For those of you that I do work with, I'm sure I'm going to see you at some point real soon. For those of you that I have not had the pleasure of working with yet, maybe at some point our paths will cross, and I will definitely look forward to that. But for now, take care, and yeah, hopefully we'll see you soon.